Hello, BookTube. I have a very good, meaty Brattle Bookshop book haul for you today, courtesy of a gift card phoned into them by one of you. I got quite a bit. It was a generous gift card, and I got quite a bit of stuff that I can't show on camera because it's going to turn right around and it's for some of you, and I don't want to spoil the surprise in case you might be watching. But I wanted to show you. What do we have here? 5 items that I got for myself. That's terrible, I know, but I did. I was given permission to do either one, either indulge yourself or get stuff for other people. So that's what I did. And the first one is a gigantic novel. It's called Antarctic Navigation by Elizabeth Arthur, and it was done in the early 90s when I wasn't reviewing. And I remember seeing it in the bookstore where I was working and thinking, I really should read that. It looks very ambitious. It's about an Antarctic exploration edition headed by an American woman, an American scientist, who's, of course, haunted by Scott's expedition the whole time that she's in the Antarctic. And I read a couple of reviews of it back when it came out, and I was intrigued, and then it just disappeared in a way that can't happen now. A big, ambitious novel now is squarely on my radar. A big, ambitious book of any kind is squarely on my radar now, so it can't disappear. But at the time, I wasn't doing it any kind of thought. I was reading all the reviews, but I wasn't as much in the game. So I heard about this and then just made a mental note to get to it and never did. And one of the glories of the Brattle Bookshop here in Boston is that you get these kind of second chances all the time. Everything shows up there. You never know what you're going to see. So I'm going to give this a try. And see what I missed the first time around. Although I know already one of the melancholy things that will be in it, McMurdo Sound, the whole area of the Antarctic where the novel takes place, looks very different now in 2017 than it did in 1992 or 93 when this book was written. It looks very different, and it's never going to go back to looking the way it did. So I believe, if I remember correctly from the talk that surrounded this book when it came out, the book is very much about white. It's very much about the desolation of the Antarctic, the frozen desolation of it. And that is going to change. Those of you who are in your 20s will live to see an Antarctic passageway that's completely navigable by water. You'll live to see the greening of the Antarctic. And the drowning of Miami, but you can't have one without the other. The next one, also a gem that you only find at the Brattle, and something that I had years and years ago. I checked already. This is not my copy, but I was immensely happy to find it. I can't wait to read it again. It's called The Memoir of a Bastard Angel, and it's by Harold Norse, who was a follower of the Beats and a poet in his own right, a loudly acclaimed poet in his own right. Back in the middle of the 20th century, and he was well known. He was well liked by a lot of people, and despite the fact that his name is totally unknown today, his ability as a writer, his skill as a writer, was praised by all of those friends. They might have had their differences of opinion about him, but they were all unanimous in the fact that he was one of the best writers among them. And you might think, well, what group of friends won't say that about someone? But this group of friends was, Robert Graves, Mary McCarthy, Lillian Hellman, W.H. Auden, a little-known writer named James Baldwin. And when those people are saying that you're the best prose stylist among them, it means something. I read this when it first came out. It is a bacchanal of epic proportions. It is a wonderful, seedy, horrible, joyous portrait of the pre-AIDS gay world. The gay world in its most liberated quarters, before you risked everything with an anonymous sexual partner, before there was this mystery disease that seemed to be tailored to killing gay people. For that disease not only had mortality rates, it also changed the psyche completely. In all of the places that are mentioned, the Bay Area and Fire Island and all of those places, the psyche changed completely. And this book is. There are almost no premonitions of that in here. This is totally caught up in its own thing. And I remember reading it when it first came out. God, this had to be 30 years ago? This came out, yeah, 1989. I remember reading it at the time and loving it, but thinking, some of the gillies are gilded here. But now, thinking about it and looking forward to rereading it, I remember vividly how much literary stuff is in here, how literary this is. I imagine a lot of it went right past me when I read it the first time, so I can't wait to read it again. Then the next one is unreadable. I bought an unreadable book, and not only is it unreadable, but it's 1,000 pages long, and it's frustrating for me to think about, all of which we think would be reasons why I wouldn't buy it, but no, it's a Penguin classic. And it's not just a Penguin classic. It may very well be the strangest Penguin classic of them all. It's their Penguin classic of the Domesday book. With absolutely lovely gold-gilded lettering, and you've got the misty downs there, and it's exactly what it says. It's the gigantic, unprecedented survey that William the Conqueror took of his conquered island in about 1086, 1087, about the time, 20 years after he took over England. It was proposed to him that a giant survey be conducted to find out who owned what and where and how much. And it was done. It was conducted all over the country, massive flying panels of people, and became an incredibly important book for historians, certainly, and for legal historians and whatnot. But it is not in any way a work of literature, which is supposed to be Penguin's mission. It's not in any way a work of literature. So I don't know why it exists, but I had it once upon a time in this gigantic Penguin classic, and I didn't keep it. So I was very happy to find it again. And it's frustrating for the simple reason that there's no critical apparatus, virtually none. There's a glossary of people in the back, but otherwise, I'm sure I can show you on camera. The introduction to this incredibly recondite 1,000-year-old land survey is that it's 2 columns on 1 page, and there are no footnotes. There's no. You could fill the bottom of every page, which gives you just who owns what and where and when. You could fill the bottom of every page with light biographical glosses so that you know something about the people involved. There have been editions of Domesday book that did that, but not this one. And the reason it frustrates me is because if you're going to reprint an admittedly important document that isn't literary, that has no literary merits, no literary aspirations at all, if you're going to do that in a literary reprint line, the least you can do is make it a volume that the generally interested reader can pick up and read. Somebody who doesn't already know a lot of the background to a lot of these families. And you can't do that with this book. And the reason it frustrates you is because Penguin actually did that later on. After they did this, they did a volume of Magna Carta, which is also a fundamental legal document with no literary value whatsoever, that is incredible. Absolutely incredible. One of the greatest Penguin classics of all time. The Penguin classic of Magna Carta. So I kind of wish, looking at this again, when I was getting it back here, I kind of wish that they did that with this. To make it, to ground it, to make it so that a general reader can understand why it's important that it would even be here. But I love finding it anyway, because in this particular case, I know this is going to sound awfully poncy, but in this particular case, I'm not a general reader. I'm well steeped in English history, and so paging through this thing will actually be a different experience for me than somebody who sees it on a new release table and says it's awful pretty, but what is it? So there's that. Now, the next one is a biography. It's a Gentleman of New York. It's a biography of Daniel Patrick Moynihan, who was he was a senator forever and ever. He was part of the Nixon administration. He was an ambassador. He was a bon vivant and a wonderful raconteur. And he was tall and smart and always learning. A genuinely wonderful person. And proof to what used to be the axiom, what was the axiom in American political life for 200 years, which is that no matter how bad the presidential administration is that's assembled in Washington to wield power, no matter how bad it is, there'll always be at least one genuinely good man attached to it. And when Watergate was broiling across the whole state of the country, and it was all anybody could talk about, and the president was continuing, and he was saying he was the subject of a witch hunt, and he was saying that it was fake news, all sorts of commentators were saying, well, that maxim was true until now, but there are no good men in this administration, and they were wrong, and a lot of them had to admit it. A lot of them had to say, we would say there are no good men in this administration, but there's Pat Monahan. What he's doing there, we have no idea, but he's there. So there is that one good man. That axiom in 2017 is now dead. But once upon a time, it came close to dying. And this is the story of that man. And the biographer, Godfrey Hodgson, made a point. He makes a point in this book. I was happy to find it in hardcover because my paperback's falling apart. He makes a point in this biography of consulting lots and lots of Moynihan's enemies. People who thought he was full of it, people who thought he was a grandstander, people who thought he was a flyweight. I might not agree with those people, but they are amply represented in this book. And I'd be willing to bet, if you don't know anything about Moynihan, when you start this book, I'd be willing to bet at the end of the book you think he was great, even despite, maybe because of those negative people. So it's a classic work of political biography. I'm very happy to have it. And then the last thing I got, because it's in hardcover, I actually have the paperback up on the shelf. But I took the paperback down just the other day. The reason I have the paperback is because it's well blurbed. And I took it down off the shelf to reread one thing in it and realized this isn't comfortable. And when I was thinking that, I was thinking I had the hardcover once upon a time because I reviewed it for The Other Side of the World, for Abu Dhabi, where my editor at the time was an Englishman and said yes in New York Minute when I suggested it. And I remember when I was fumbling with the paperback, I remember thinking, gee, the hardcover of that was lovely. You should have kept it. So when I saw it, I grabbed it. It's Forever Rumpole by John Mortimer. This is a collection of short stories about the beleaguered Old Bailey hack barrister who siphons the rich pickings of legal aid at No. 3 Equity Court and does battle all day long in court with the likes of Judge Ollie Oliphant. and then goes home in the evenings after a restorative glass of Chateau Thames and banquet at Pomeroy's. He goes home in the evening to the Gloucester Road and faces the tender mercies of his wife Hilda, she who must be obeyed. And I gobbled this up, and I wrote a review that, if memory serves, I'll try and remember to leave the link down below. If memory serves, my review was decidedly tepid. And looking back on it, it was probably 5 years ago, looking back on it, I wonder if I wasn't too harsh. Any collection of Rumpole short stories that isn't all Rumpole short stories is probably going to bother me. This one has Rumpole and the Children of the Devil. It has the two, in my opinion, the two greatest ones of them all, Rumpole and the Tap End, and Rumpole and the Bubble Reputation. The Bubble Reputation features that bottler of historical bilge water, the romance novelist Amelia Nettleship. And it's absolutely delightful. And the Tap End is about a bumbling judge who can't get on the right side of the women of England. And it has those two, and it has a bunch of other wonderful stuff too. I'll leave my link down below, but in this rare instance, I'm telling you, take it with a grain of salt. Any Rumpole collection is great. So if you happen to come across this for 10 cents at a yard sale, you can't go wrong. And there you go. That is a Brattle haul. Totally free. This is the part of it anyway. This is Forever Rumpole, The Gentleman of New York, the Domesday book, complete and translated, memoir of a fallen angel, or a bastard angel, right? Because Norse was forever going on. He was forever banging on about his parentage. You don't hear me doing that. And then Antarctic Navigation, big fat novel that I did not get to, and I felt bad about it this whole time. And then, as usual, the Brattle provided, so now I get a chance to dig into it. So there you go, and I'll be back with more book nattering in no time at all. Thank you, BookTube.